Hey, GED students, I've got good news and bad news for you. And depending on your personality type, it won't be the same which one's the good and which one's the bad. But I'll start with the good news. Let's call it good news. I am in this book going to finally teach you to factor forwards. If you have been working with me a long time and you're like, why does she make so many videos about not teaching us how to factor? We need this for college. Yes, I will teach you to do it forwards. However, not in this particular unit. Sorry, is coming later. First, we're going to use the same skills we've been using, which is to do the opposite of factor. So what does factor mean? Factor means to take an expression and kind of pull it back out into a multiplication problem. So this is factor 16z squared minus 9. So it's saying take 16z squared minus 9 and figure out what things you would have to multiply together in order to make that. That takes a little bit of learning, and like I said, we'll do it later. But for now, we have multiple choice. We can still do this in the opposite direction. If factoring is pulling it out into a multiplication problem, then the opposite of factoring is actually doing the multiplication, putting it together. And so that's what we'll do. We'll take our answer key, we'll guess, and we'll check. We'll do the multiplication and see if it simplifies to 16z squared minus 9. So I think I'll just start with the very first one. 4z minus 3 times 4z minus 3. Let's try simplifying this, multiplying it out, and see if it gives us 16z squared minus 9. Well, 4z times 4z. 4 times 4 is 16, yay, and z times z, 2z's multiplying. How do we talk about repeated multiplication with exponents? So that's z squared. Now, 4z times negative 3. Well, 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And you got your calculator right there if you need to do that. And of course, I had a z in that multiplication, and so it's negative 12z. I finished passing out the 4z. Now it's time to pass out the negative 3. So negative 3 times 4z. Again, negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Look at that repeating. I have another negative 12z. And then negative 3 times negative 3 finally is positive 9. And again, feel free to use your calculator. Even if negatives make you a little nervous, using your calculator is a great idea. All right, and now I'll combine any like terms, and I do see some like terms. I have a couple of z terms. So there's only one z squared term. I'll still have that. Now, careful, negative 12z. I'm already in debt 12z's. And then I borrow, it's another negative 12z. Now I'm really in trouble. I owe a total of 24z. And again, you could type that in your calculator, not the z, but you could do negative 12 minus 12. And you will have a calculator if you have this on the GED. And look at that. Yeah, negative 24. And now there's no other constants. There's no other plain old numbers without variables. And so I'll just do plus 9. And you can see this guy does not simplify to z 16z squared minus 9. And in fact, something interesting happened. You can see when I had these two identical terms like this, I ended up with this middle term. Notice how this one doesn't have a z. It just has a z squared and a 9. And so I don't like signs there. I think something else is going to have to happen with my signs. So you know what? I'm going to skip from A to C. And again, it doesn't really matter, but I just noticed a pattern and I didn't like how ugly that one got when they were identical. Let's see what happens when the two terms look the same, but they have different signs. By the way, I'm kind of sneaky right here. I'm setting you up for when we actually do get to factoring. The reason why I don't teach you factoring right away is because it involves some memorization of form. And that's a lot for a new learner. That's why I like the guess and check method. But the more we multiply these out and see what happens, the more we're going to notice these patterns so that when we do go to memorize the forms to be able to factor them, they won't be so scary anymore. So anyway, watch what happens. When I have almost the exact same thing, 4z, 4z, 3, 3, but this time the signs, they're different. So 4z times 4z. Well, once again, I have the 4 times 4 is 16, and z times z is z squared, or 2z's multiplying. And now 4z times negative 3, just like before, is negative 12z. But look what happens with this next term. This next term is not -3, it's +3. What's +3 times 4z? Well, it's positive 12z. I have the same basic term, but a different sign this time. And now +3 times -3 is -9. All right. And so look what happens with the middle terms this time, guys. It's like I did it on purpose. I have -12z, and then I have +12z. I owe you 12z, then I pay you the 12z I owe you. There's no z's left. -12 plus 12 zeros out. How many z's do I have? No z's. So what do I have left? I have that first 16z squared, and I have that -9 from the end, and I end up with no middle term. And by the way, guys, this is exactly one of the factorings we are going to learn a little later. So, hey, um, we are going to learn that if you have two perfect squares, 16z squared and 9, they're both perfect squares, with a minus sign in between them and no middle term, well, you know what that is? That's called a difference of squares. And that's one of the things I'm going to ask you to memorize later. But for now, just notice what cool thing happened. C here is the correct answer because it does multiply out to be 16z squared minus 9. All right, you guys. Very nice work. If you want to multiply out B and D to test yourself and to practice multiplying binomials, by all means do it. But C is the correct answer, so I won't check myself now. You know what? I just had a thought. If you were taking the test and you stumbled upon the one that was right, I would totally say it's C and then flag it and come back to it at the end of the test. And if you have time, you can multiply out all four to make sure you didn't make a sign error, because that's the most common error here. It'd be really easy to make a sign error and think you were right. But at least you have one selected. So I think I like that for a test strategy. All right, you guys, strong work. Happy learning.